Oh, good evening, and welcome to Childhood Mental Health Issues, a growing epidemic in our schools, presented by the NEA Edcommunities Network on the Bully Free Group. Good evening. I am Susie Gannett, and I am going to be your presenter and also your host tonight. My other presenter, Kathy Ritchie, is she's in Illinois, so she's trying to get in. But first, trying to get in online. First, a little bit about housework, in the items. All the links to this webinar and to any other onto the YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch these recordings, and they are going to I'm going to post all the PowerPoint slides and everything on my site, on the NEA Edcommunities site. Kathy Ritchie, who is also a facilitator for the NEA on the trauma-induced stress, trauma in children, also will have them posted in her group. The other thing is I would highly encourage you to join both of our groups, the trauma group for children and the bully free group. It's easy to do. I will have instructions on one of the slides at the end of this presentation. And all you have to do is, it's free to join. You don't have to be an educator. You do not have to be a member of NEA. You just have to have a passion and want to help children. And oh, there I see she popped up. I don't know if she's got volume, but we'll see. So I strongly encourage you to join us in our groups, and you can look at the other groups that are on the site. Again, you don't have to be a member of the association. You don't have to be an educator or a teacher or anything. You just have to have a passion. So tonight we're going to start a little bit. I'm going to do a little screen share here. Let's see how this works. Let's go full screen. Okay. Childhood mental illness, a growing epidemic in our schools. A lot of you might be wondering, childhood mental illnesses, why are we even talking about that? Well, there's more than a couple reasons, but the main reason is 1 out of every 5 children are diagnosed with a mental disorder. So that's 20% of children in the US are diagnosed with a mental disorder. Unfortunately, United States is the country with the highest percentage of mental health illness and disorders. And that is one of the reasons why we have to take a look at this and why it is so important. What I want to do next is, and I hope the slide is progressing, show you the game of life for a young person with a mental health problem. The game of life for a young person with a mental health problem is very real. You're going to start at school, and you've got to remember that 9 out of 10 young people receive negative reactions to their mental health diagnosis. That's 9 out of 10. That's almost 100% of these kids who start school or who are going to school are dealing with a mental health issue. Problem is, when you get to school, negative reactions. Most negative reactions come from friends, 70%. And those of you who have kids or, and your students, friends are everything. So with a child, it's like a double whammy. Not only does he dealing with mental health issues, he's also dealing with negative reactions from 70% of his friends and 40% from his teachers, which makes it extremely difficult to continue to study or to go to school when you're dealing with this negativity. We also know that why it's so important to address these issues in school, because 50% of people living with mental illness experience onset by the age of 14. So that means that the 50%, half of them, are in your classrooms from elementary all the way to high school. So it's really important that schools address these issues. And also, this is the alarming part for me, more than 75% of children in need of mental health services do not receive them. That is huge. That is more than obviously the majority. And what we know is mental health illnesses in children doesn't discriminate. 88% of Latino children have unmet mental health needs, compared to 77% for African Americans and 76% of Caucasians. Again, the vast majority do not receive any services whatsoever. And that's another reason why it is so important. So now we're going to the next step in our game of life, which is 40% stop going to school or college. They drop out. And that is a high number. That is 40% of the kids who are dealing with mental health issues drop out of school. Not only do they drop out of school, but we also know that 70% of our youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health disorder. The majority of school shooters also have dealt with mental health illness. When I look at that statistic, it's scary. It's 70%. That's, to me, it's just inconceivable. And we also know, besides dropping out, we go to our next square on our game, and 30% do not join any groups or any extracurricular activities. This makes total sense, because obviously struggling in school and you're struggling socially, you're not going to be involved in a lot of extracurricular activities whatsoever. And to me, that's just sad, because what that causes is isolation. And we know that's one of the most, it's not a good combination for a child. Also, along our path of life, we have fear of negative reactions, which means they will not, they have reactions. They stop, 57% stop applying for jobs, 32% do not apply for further education, applying for further education. So what happens, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have this illness and it has you go through school or you go, for your career, it doesn't get any better. I think the most alarming stop on our game of life is the last one. Ultimately, 1/4 will give up their hopes and their dreams. And for some, they give up their lives. To me, this is the most disturbing statistic of all. More than 90% of children who die by suicide have a mental health condition. 90%. That to me is alarming. Not only that, the average high school classroom includes 1 boy and 2 girls who have attempted suicide in the past. After hearing this and seeing what the game of life is for a young person with mental health problems, we can't ignore this growing epidemic in our schools. It is just inconceivable to me how we cannot, how we could possibly ignore it. So as you can see at the bottom of this, it says this game sucks, and I'd have to agree with that. It does. Okay, other reasons we need to address mental health issues in our school. I just told you some of those, but a big one is because all school personnel, and what I mean by that is it's not just educators, it's education support professionals, from our custodians to our cafeteria workers to our paraprofessionals. These are the people that are most in touch with our students. Students spend 7 to 8 hours at school a day. And what we know, and I just previously did a talk on for educational support personnel. And what I found is they are the ones, and research has shown that they are the most connected to the students because they see them much more on a, I want to say, personal basis. Support personnel, whether you're the custodian, whether you're the lunch lady, your relationship with that student your relationship with them is much more of a personal relationship, where a teacher, kids are savvy enough to know that a teacher, yes, even if they like the teacher, the bottom line is the teacher wants them to do well academically, where custodians, janitors, paras don't have that pressure for kids to have to achieve. They're the ones that, when surveys have been done with kids, that education support professionals are the ones that kids feel closest to and trust. They are also the ones that work with our high-risk population, whether it be a student with disabilities, whether it be an LGBTQ student. a sexual orientation. These are, the paras are the ones that usually are working one-on-one with them, along with the teachers. So it's extremely important that the whole school be involved in addressing mental health issues, not just educators. And also educators and school support personnel are on the forefront for eliminating labels and any stigmas attached to mental health disorders. Problem with mental health disorders is there's such a stigma attached to them. And educators and school support personnel can help end that stigma and end that embarrassment. We talk about other illnesses, we talk about diabetes, we talk about if the child is sick, but what we don't talk about is their mental health issues, which are very real. Okay, what all school personnel need to know concerning mental health issues in our schools. Okay, if you are working with kids in any capacity, whether you're a parent, whether you're the school cafeteria worker, whatever, you need to know the early warning signs of mental illness. Okay, very basic. And I think we all know, you know, when we see kids that are keeping to themselves, are more withdrawn, get those early warning signs. It's so important to communication skills, build that trust and that empathy and the communication between the school and the family, because it does take a village to raise a child. It takes all of us. We also need support and guidance for our educators, our school personnel that work with students. We need to support them on what they can do and what services are available. You know, as a past educator myself, I know how difficult it is, especially now with the push for testing and everything, is to connect and get those resources and also try to build a relationship with your student. So it's important that we, you know, take care of in working with students and how we can help them. The next one is a positive school climate, which I believe is the key to helping children, all children, but especially children with mental health issues. Positive school climate is in all school process. It involves a whole environment of just basic kindness and taking, you know, caring for each other and making a personal connection. There are so many ways that we can do this. You know, unfortunately, especially in high schools and in middle schools where I was a counselor, you know, they're getting so big that there really isn't a personal connection. Positive school climate, making that a priority in schools helps make that personal connection, because we know that when kids have a personal connection, they're less likely to get involved in drugs. They're less likely to drop out of school, and they're less likely to commit suicide. There are a lot of programs out there, some very simple programs. I just did a webinar, and you can watch it if you'd like, on, well, coming up on Be Nice, which is a program in it's exactly that. It's just be nice. And another program, Peacekeepers, which is a fabulous program. They're both out of Michigan. A program that integrates, it's not like what I want to say, a lecture type of thing. It's changing that whole school environment. And that's a big order, but it does work. Also, for school personnel, know your personal and professional limits. Identify own stigmatized ideas about mental health. This is very important. A lot of teachers or even paraprofessionals will say, well, I don't need to know about, mental health illness. I think it's all, goofy. You need to deal with those feelings because we can't help others if you don't deal with your own stigmatized ideas about mental health. The language and skills to communicate mental health concerns about a child to parents and colleagues. This is very important. So many times I know when I have been dealing with parents, I have very, what I want to say, they mean well, whether it's a teacher or whether it's a paraprofessional, they mean really well, but they really can't communicate with parents. And I know a lot of parents will say, oh, I feel like the teacher talks down to me. So I think it's really important that we learn how to use those skills instead of always calling parents with bad news. A simple thing like calling them with good news, or just calling them and telling them, so-and-so just did this today. And I just wanted to tell you, as a parent myself, that goes a long ways. Number 7 is appreciation and awareness of diverse populations. This is so important. This means an appreciation and awareness of kids of different religions, different racial backgrounds, different sexual orientation. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to agree with what the student is experiencing. Doesn't mean you have to agree with homosexuality, but it does mean that you need to be aware and respectful of what these kids are going through. Words, do not judge. And I think that's one of the most important things. We in this society tend to be quick to judge others. 8, understand student mental health issues and know how they affect all students' experiences in the classroom. Okay, you need to know that these kids with mental health issues, they're not islands, and how it affects their experiences in the classroom. And I think what's hardest for kids with mental health issues is because they physically look fine, but inside they're a mess. They're dealing with some heavy duty issues. So it's very easy to not understand what they're going through. I know a lot of kids that say, oh, my mom says I can't have problems because I'm a straight A student and because, I have friends. No, that's not true. So just be aware that, we're all dealing with something. On the outside, you might never be able to tell. And that's why mental health issues are so hard to deal with, because you don't see that outwardly disability. Work with the colleagues to identify strategies to help struggling students. And what I think is important here is we all need to work together. And it doesn't mean, the teacher has all the answers, or, the counselor has all the answers. What I did as a counselor is I I went and identified people, people that the student had told me they had a great relationship with. And most of the students that I work with, most of the people that I work with were the custodian and the cafeteria workers. They were the ones that would alert me to something going on with that student so that I could talk to them. And 80% of the children that I counseled, when I asked, who is somebody that you feel you can talk to, would always mention the bus driver or the playground para. So it's really important you work with other colleagues. And I'm always the first to say, wow, this teacher works great with this student. So let's make that connection. Let's get rid of, because I'm a counselor, that must mean I can work with all kids really well. Especially when you get into those upper grades. And the last one we have is classroom management strategies. And I am hoping that we have Kathy Ritchie with us. And I'm going to go back and stop sharing now and see if we can get her online. Okay. There's Kathy. Yeah, look at that. Now, Kathy, I cannot hear you. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And I hope it's working. I'll undo me and have you. Oh, am I screen sharing mine still? Okay. Kathy, you are up. Oh, I think we lost Kathy. And these are her slides. I think we're dealing with, she does not have audio. Yikes. Okay. We do have her slides up. It's the effects of trauma on learning. And I'm hoping she's going to be able to come up, but we might have to go back to my slides and we'll get that part done. Okay, bear with me here. Okay, hopefully you can see this. This is the NEA Edcommunities, professional practice communities where great minds are inspired. Collaborate, share, and learn. This is where I invite you to join either one of our groups, or both of them, or any of the other groups that you look at. It's very simple to join. And to participate, you just sign up at www.mynea360.org. Free, and it's open to all. So whether you're an educator, whether you are a custodian, it's open. You do not have to belong to the association to join. You just have to have a passion to help children. My group is the Bully Free group on the NEA Edcommunities network. It is a trauma-informed classroom strategies group on the NEA Edcommunities network, is Kathy's. Kathy Ritchie is the facilitator, and I am of that one. The next slide I wanted to show you is I have a webinar coming up Tuesday, the 17th. And it's going to be on Adobe Connect, so it is not going to be on Google. It is on Adobe Connect. There's a link, and you can also, the link will take you again to the NEA Edcommunities group site. So there you can join my group or Kathy's or, excuse me, or Kathy's. And once you join, you'll be able to click on the links and join us for the webinar. The webinar, I'm having two presenters, Teresa McGuinn, who's the Senior Director of Policy and Programming for Mental Health America, and Christy Buck, who I spoke to you about, the Executive Director of the Mental Health Foundation in West Michigan, who does the Be Nice program. So you need to join the NEA Edcommunities, go on the website and join any of the groups, and you'll be able to see the webinar. Also, you will, all the slides and Kathy's slides, because I think we lost her, all the slides for this webinar and for Kathy's will be on both our sites. So you'll have access to them and to so many other resources. So I thank you for joining us tonight. And with that, I think I can see Kathy. She just can't talk. So again, please go there and join, and then you can look up any of the information that I had tonight. Also, also the recording for this will be on Google Hangouts Plus and YouTube. So you'll always be able to refer back to this recording. Thank you so much.